watching this video, you should already be able to solve the Rubik's Cube in under a minute. Now in this video, we're going to learn the CFOP method. It's an acronym. It stands for cross, F2L, or first two layers, OLL, or orient last layer, and then PLL, which would, of course, just be a solved cube. So, first of all, the first step, cross. You should really already know how to do this. There's not really any algorithms for it. I guess just a tip I could give you is if you have one that's out, you can use the white layer to put it back in. You see how I did that? I sort of turned the white layer, I broke all the edges, put this in, fixed all the edges, now I have my cross. Also, I'd suggest having white on the bottom because the next step will require you to have yellow on the top, but that's really it for the cross. It's pretty simple. Okay, so the next step is F2L, or first two layers. So, normally you would probably put corners in, then you'd put edges in. So, what F2L is that we're going to put both in at the same time. So when I say F2L pair, I mean two pieces that are where they're supposed to go. So this would be an F2L pair here, you see? Because it's this edge, this corner. So, we try to get it where it's supposed to be. So, we're going to do that 4 times around the cube. So, this one is really hard to teach. There aren't really any algorithms for it. You're just going to have to figure this out on yourself. This is the biggest way to drop time. I dropped a good 20 seconds when I learned F2L, but you're just going to have to work on it. It's going to feel slower at first, but eventually it's going to really drop time. So I'm just going to show you 3 main cases of F2L, but there are so many cases of F2L, you just have to figure it out by logic. Okay, so the first F2L pair case is if white is facing up. So, this is blue and orange. Let's try to find blue and orange. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to need to use something called a keyhole slot. This is an example of a keyhole slot. That means that I can move it up, and it won't hurt any of the stuff that I've already built, like this. Like if I moved this up, I just broke my F2L pair, which I really don't want to do, because then I'll have to just start over again. So, let's go back to this F2L pair case. So, what I'll do is I'll try to move this into the second layer, so then I can use the top layer to move this on top, then I'll move this back. Alright, so now this is together. This is the best way to insert it. You see I just brought this up, slid it in, now it's in. You can also go down, move the face out of the way, move the edge back, move the face back. Neither are faster, they're the same amount of moves, but you can do that if you want. It's part of algorithms as well. The next F2L pair case I'm going to show you is if white is on the side and the edge is on the top, but it's flipped. This is actually good if it's flipped, it's easier. So what we're going to try to do is move this to the top, okay? So I'll show you why in a moment. So let's use this keyhole slot, move it out of the way, move it up, move back, there we go. Now it's where it's supposed to be. Now I'll show you why it's so easy. Move it up, it pushes those together, see I just move it up, they're together, move it towards me, and it's in. See, that was our F2L pair. Up, cross, and it's in. Alright, the last case I'm going to show you is if white is on the side and the edge is not flipped. Surprisingly, this is harder. So, what we're going to try to do is use a keyhole slot. Here's one. Move it out of the way. And what we're going to try to do is put the edge here because it's not flipped, so we can just move this around and put these together. So, move it out of the way, keyhole slot, turn the top twice, now they're together. Now, as you notice, as you start getting to the last pairs, there's less and less keyhole slots. You'll just have to get better at knowing how to turn the cube and also reducing cube rotations. That's something that I really had to learn, was cube rotations. When you start, you can, like for instance, if I have an F2L pair case like this, I just know that I can build it and then insert it backwards like that. And you see I didn't even have to turn the cube. I just put that F2L pair case in. So just really try to minimize cube rotations, and please work on F2L. Don't put corners in like beginner's method. It will really help if you can really just stick with it. Okay, now technically if you want to learn the entire CFOP, you're going to have to memorize every permutation of orienting the last layer. There's like 50, I don't even know all of them. So what I would suggest is learning something called 2-look. This is where you use 2 algorithms to orient the whole last layer. And this is much simpler. You know, there's building the cross, and then there's 7 more cases after that. So by now you should know all of your cross cases, you know, that and everything. So you build your cross, and then there are 7 different things that can happen. This is one of them. So now I'll show all 7 in a row. Alright, the first case we have is called Sune. That's spelled S-U-N-E. It's the easiest in my opinion. It's really simple. You probably already know the algorithm. Now notice this is different than this case. Here, look, this is facing me, but in this case it's facing away. This is called anti-Sune. It's sort of the opposite. So here's the algorithm for the normal Sune. R, U, R prime, U, R, U2, R prime. And it's really easy to get fast at this one, you know, just sort of drag your hand to get that last U, and that's really simple. Now we'll move to anti-Sune. So people use different ways for this. I'll show you 2 ways that are the best ways. I sort of use them interchangeably. I don't really know which one's better. They're the same amount of moves, about the same difficulty, so I'll show both of them to you. Alright, here's one. This is where I have the fixed corner in the top right. R, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U prime, R prime. So that did that. And now, here's the other way. This is literally just Sune, but I'm doing it in the back. As you see, this is like Sune, but it's backwards. So watch this. R prime, U prime, R, U prime, R prime, U2, R. That did the exact same thing. You can use either one of them. I prefer that first one, just because it's sort of easier, but you can use either one of them. So those are 2 OLL cases. Okay, so these next 2 OLL cases have very similar algorithms, so I'm going to show them back to back. There's really 2 ways of doing both. I think I've found a better way, but I'm just going to show the most accepted ways first. So for this case, you see these are fixed, and these are facing out. These are called blinkers. So you'll position it like this, with the fixed part here, and you'll do this algorithm. Alright, little r, u, r prime, u prime, little r prime, f, r, f prime. There you go. I'll do that one more time, just 1 second. Just getting a case. So, it's like this, and then kind of go like that, sort of like a half cube turn. That's the best way to finger trick it. Now this next case is very similar, so watch. We'll first start it by doing f prime, and then we'll essentially do the same algorithm, because you see, we kind of put a blinker here. So, little r, u, r prime, u prime, little r prime, f, r. See, that's very similar. So, build these cases again. Now I'll show you the way I think the best way is. So, these are parts of a permutation called E-perm. I have a video on it. So you'll begin by putting the yellow side towards you. The same for this one. So for this one, you'll put these at the bottom, and you'll do this algorithm. R, U, R prime, D, R, U prime, R prime, D prime. So once again, R, U, R prime, D, R, U prime, R prime, D prime. It's just a lot faster. You can really finger trick it a lot faster. And it's sort of the same for this one. I'll show the algorithm up on the screen. So hold it with this facing here and this facing here. R, U prime, R prime, D, R, U, R prime, D prime. See, the first one I moved this layer here, then here. And for the second one, I moved the top layer here, then here. So EPERM is just that first one, and then that second one. But you can also use them for OLL. So, see here, there we go. Okay, this next one is when you just have one pair of headlights and the rest is facing up. There's not really anything to compare it to. Here's the algorithm. R2, D, R, U2, R, D prime, R prime, U2, R prime. So faster. You'll just have to work on that. It's sort of weird. This next one is very simple. It's when you have headlights here, headlights here. So hold it with headlights in front of you. Do F, and then you'll go R, U, R prime, U prime. You'll do that 3 times, and that's it. Once again, here it is. There you go. That's that OLL case. Alright, so this next one is if you have headlights and blinkers at the same time. This one, I think, is the longest. I don't know. It takes the longest amount of time. So here's the algorithm. R, U2, R2, U prime, R2, U prime, R2, U2, R. So once again, some people do this and then they like trace their hand around and then do that last one. I like to just move my fingers like that. And there's another way. You sort of just do EPERM backwards. I'm not even really going to show it. I don't think it's faster. I used to think it was faster, but this is the fastest way to do this case. Okay, so now that we have oriented the last layer, we've come to a tough point in the video. So the next step is to memorize every single permutation of all the pieces. Yeah, it's a lot of algorithms. It took me a few weeks. It'll probably take you a few weeks as well. To begin, I would suggest learning these two that I'm going to show you right now. One of them is if you have headlights, the other one is if you have no headlights, and it'll just fix all the corners at once. These are the easiest ways to do that, so I would learn these two first. And it's even okay if you only learn these two. If you really don't care that much and you don't want to learn more than 20 algorithms, then that's fine. If you just want to learn these two, that's alright. So this first one is called T-perm. Okay, so R, U, R prime, U prime, it's easy. R prime, F, R2, U prime, R prime, U prime, R, U, R prime, F. So then as you can see, since we had headlights on the left, remember that, headlights on the left, it just switches these two and switches these two. So there you go, that's that one. Now this next one is very similar. Here, let me just set it up for a second. Okay. The next one is very similar. It's called Y-perm. So you essentially do the second part, then the first part. You'll see what I mean after you get better at it. So here it is. F, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, R, U, R prime, F prime. R, U, R prime, U prime, R prime, F, R, F prime. So you see there's really two moves. There's this, that was the first move, and then the second move is, and you just switch those. For T perm, you do this one first, then you do this move. For Y perm, you start with the second move, then you do the first one. So remember, Y perm switches diagonal, T perm switches across. Okay, now that you have done the corners, now it's time to switch around the edges. So once again, if you learn full CFOP, which I know, you'll never come to this step. You'll just have one step to permutate all the pieces, and then the cube will be solved. But since you'll only know T perm and Y perm, you'll still have to move around these edges. So this is the most common case. It's called U perm. You might already have algorithms for this. There's a lot of different ways, but I'm just going to show you the best way to do it. Okay. Start by an M2. Now, look around the cube. Find the one that's opposite. You see how red is opposite orange? So find the one that's opposite, turn it towards you. Bring the middle down, so M. U2, M prime. Turn it the same way as you did before. If I had turned it originally this way, I would have turned it that way. Then M2. So this would be the opposite. M2, turn the opposite towards you. M, U2, M prime. Same way, M2. There are two more cases that you really should learn how to do in one step. So these two cases are if you have no bar in the back. So this one's called H perm. It's if you have two sets of opposite. This one's called Z perm if you have switched. I have videos on both of these, but I'm just going to show it in this video as well since you're learning CFOP for the first time. So here's the easier one first. H perm. If you have these swapped, M2, U prime, M2, U2, M2, U prime, M2. So in essence, it's just M2, 1, 2, 1, you're done. 1, 2, 1, you're done. That's H perm. It is really the easiest PLL case. It's also kind of rare, so it's rare that you'll get that easy of a PLL case, but there you go, that's H perm. Now, Z perm is a little bit harder. It looks deceivingly like H perm because all of them are swapped, but it's different and it has a different algorithm. So, hold the ones you want to swap here with your left hand, perform this algorithm. U2. So I do the U2 at the beginning because at the end I'll have to do a U2, but it's easier if I could do it right at the beginning. So, M2, U prime, M2, U prime, M prime, U2, M2, U2, M prime. So you see how my fingers were down here, it would be hard to go back up and then turn it again. So if you have this, do a U2 first, then do your algorithm. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please watch it a few times if you plan on memorizing these algorithms because they will really help you drop time. I use this method and I can hit under 20 seconds pretty easily. So if you want to move faster, please visit my page. I have videos for each and every one of those permutations of the last layer, and I hope you do well.